Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to becoming shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. That was wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Bill, who is someone that I met very early on my healing journey. As a matter of fact, I think it might have been just a few months after Morgan passed at the base camp of Mount Everest. I met him at a conference, and I was fascinated by what he had to say, and I was also really excited about this book, Hello from Heaven, and the research that he's done. Let me just tell you a little bit more about him. Bill Guggenheim and Judy Guggenheim have been conducting intensive after-death communication research since 1988. Bill serves on the board of advisors of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. He is a member of the Association for Death Education and Counseling and several other organizations that minister to the needs of the terminally ill and the bereaved. Bill and Judy have presented workshops and sharing sessions at national and regional conferences of the Compassionate Friends, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the Association for Death Education and Counseling, In Loving Memory, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, Bereaved Parents of the USA, Parents of Murdered Children, other support groups for the bereaved, hospices, churches, and a wide variety of similar institutions that are devoted to personal and spiritual growth. And of course, they've also presented, Bill has presented to Helping Parents Heal on the online group. Bill and Judy and their ADC research have been featured on television and radio programs and in numerous newspaper and magazine articles throughout the United States and Canada. They have 3 sons, and they were married for 17 years before divorcing. They live separate personal lives in Central Florida and continue to work together for the ADC project. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bill Guggenheim. Bill, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I'm right here.
Okay, good.
I didn't say, I should say hello to myself, but
yes,
I raised my hand.
Wanted to make sure that you were not muted. Good. So anyway, go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead? I mean, in what way?
Okay, well, let me go ahead and first of all, just talk to you about the book, Hello from Heaven. I know that you and Judy conducted many, many years of research for this wonderful book. Could you tell us a little bit about what you learned about the afterlife from those different research studies?
Well, to be very honest, we didn't learn that much about the afterlife because unlike a near-death experience, which can last many minutes or hours, a typical after-death communication experience lasts more like seconds, and typically they're maybe 30 to 60 seconds long. Some are longer, some are shorter. And so, and the people who come are deceased. They have left this earth, and they're coming back to let us know, we the living, that they still exist. They care about us, they love us, they're concerned about us and all that. So it's validation that that there is an afterlife, because that's their home. But they don't usually reveal anything about the afterlife or heaven or nirvana or the Elysium fields or whatever you want to call it.
So how did it change your views, though, about the afterlife? And why was it exactly that you got into these studies initially? Could you tell a little bit about that?
Basically, I was attending a 5-day workshop with a very famous Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1977. And it was there that I heard the first 2 accounts by a woman who was a bereaved mother, a nurse, whose daughter had been hit and killed while she was out walking with a friend. And both girls were killed by this driver. He wasn't drunk or anything. It's just an unfortunate accident. And she went on to describe how she had this wonderful dream about her daughter, and quickly added it was unlike any other dream she'd ever had. It was very vivid, very real, had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And how her daughter was like swinging from a tree. And it was so real, so absolutely, I'm going to call it 4-dimensional, that she just wanted to rush up and hold her daughter and things of that nature. But of course, she did wake up eventually, and it was over. And then she went on and described how her teenage son had seen his sister. He was in his bedroom, I think doing his homework, and he looked over and he saw his sister Kathy standing there. That was his sister who had been killed. And he was able to see her clothing and everything like that. But he freaked out because nobody knew about these things back then, back in the around 1970 or so. And he came out into the living room yelling, "Kathy's there, Kathy's in my room." And he seemed very, upset by everything because of the novelty of it. And now, at that point, I still did not believe in these things. So I brushed them off in my head. I didn't say anything, but in my head I said, bereaved mother, I'm very happy she had this experience. It was uplifting for her, but she called it a dream, and to me, dreams were not real. And as far as the boy went, he was a teenage boy. Who knows, a little marijuana, a little something else. And I just dropped him. But however, Elizabeth herself went on to describe a very long experience she had with a patient who had died 10 months earlier, and how this patient had met her at the elevator of the office building she worked in, and they walked all the way down the hallway to Elizabeth's office, and the woman said to her, "Dr. Ross, you must promise not to quit your important research. We need you to keep doing it." And because at that point there was so much pressure against Elizabeth and her groundbreaking research with terminally ill patients and whatnot, they called her the vulture lady and all kinds of unflattering names, that she just felt she'd get out of it and go back to being an ordinary psychiatrist, which she was. And this woman elicited the promise from Elizabeth to not quit. And then Elizabeth very cleverly said, "Would you mind terribly signing a piece of paper?" Because there had been a minister present when this woman was alive, and she wanted her to write a very brief note to the minister and have her signature and to be documented and things like that. And the woman did. And then a second time, the woman said, "Please promise that you will not quit." Elizabeth said yes. She walked to the door, and Elizabeth paused a moment, then ran to the door. And it was a long hallway because this was an office building, and there was nobody in it. She just evaporated, vanished, gone. Now, with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she was already world famous at that point, had been nominated for a Nobel Prize, did not win it, but was nominated. And she had everything to lose and nothing to gain by telling an experience like this to the 70 of us in this 5-day workshop. And I was struck by it. So when I came home, and again, 1977, I began looking for these types of experiences in books, magazines, anything. And there was very, very, very little written. And I could find one case here, 2 there. Maybe in one case, I found a whole chapter, very fragmented, but a whole chapter. But that was it. And I tried to get Raymond Moody to write the book. He had written the first book about near-death experiences. He was well known. He was a medical doctor. And in these fields, you need to be a medical doctor or a PhD to have any credibility, usually. And I didn't have those credentials. So I thought, there's no use in my doing it. It'll never get published. But if Raymond does it, it'll become a bestseller, because another man and I were going to find people for him to interview and things like that. I'm using a little bit of shorthand here. But Raymond never said no to me, but he never said yes to me. And he kept saying, well, I'd love to work with you, but I have this other project to do. And this happened 3 or 4 times. So after almost 10 years went by, I heard a voice in my old head say, Billy, that was my father's calling me, Billy, do your own research and write your own book. It's your spiritual work to do. And that changed everything for me. And somehow I believed that if I did write it, somebody would publish it. And I called Judy over. And even that short time she was visiting me, after 4 years after we were divorced, she visited me. A phone call came in telling us about an experience a woman had that was evidential. In other words, she learned something she could not have known without having had this experience. And wow. And so from then on, we plowed ahead, not knowing if we'd find 50 experiences the first year. And that was 1988. And turned out we interviewed 500 people. And also the next year, 1 year later, we gave our first workshop. And it was for the Compassionate Friends at their annual conference, 2 hours away in Tampa, Florida. And our very first workshop had more than 300 people in it. And I'd had a huge problem with public speaking, but not there, not then. And so we didn't even know that much about this topic at that point. We hadn't done that much research, only 500 people. But we carried it, it went well, it was well received. We had another workshop the same day in the afternoon. Over 200 people were there. And wow. And we went back and we interviewed over 2,000 people altogether in the 7 years, collected more than 3,300 first-hand accounts. And we had the material we needed to write the book, which we had spiritual help every step of the way. That's all I can tell you. I could, just monopolize this by telling you all the different ways that manifested itself. But it was so exciting and just it was unbelievable. Every step. For instance, I went to a workshop of a woman from California who was a speaker out there named Patricia Sun, and I met a journalist from St. Petersburg Times, and I invited her to our Compassionate Friends presentation. She brought a cameraman. We had a wonderful long story with a great big color photo of a bereaved mother in the St. Petersburg Times, which we cut out and used as a validation of our research to make and everything for years. So, I mean, so many synchronistic things happened all along the way. It was unbelievable and magical, as you know from your own work. That's the way it works.
That's amazing. And I do know that it is magical and everything happens the way it's supposed to. But I know that you've given talks that are standing room only. And the one that I went to was standing room only. Can you tell us about one of the ADCs, one of these after-death communication experiences that you heard about that was the most striking to you? I know that you were saying one was evidential. Are there any that really stand out to you?
Well, frankly, one I had was, that's the one I can talk about the best. Because I'm working on another book right now, and it's called The Book of Circles. And it's a short stories I received from the other side, from different beings, some of whom I know, many of whom I don't know. But nevertheless, in 1980, Judy and I were married, and we had 3 sons, the youngest of which was not yet 2. And we had a conversation in our living room. And when we got up to leave, I heard a voice say in my head, just not with words, but no sounds, just telepathically. It was a telepathic message. Go outside and check the swimming pool. What's this? What do you mean? We had a screened-in pool. It was a house we owned. This was not a rental, but we had rented others. And anyway, I went outside to the pool, and we had a gate, a safety gate there, and the safety fence there, and the gate was ajar. So I went to close the gate, and when I looked down at the deep end of the pool, our youngest son, Jonathan, was floating in the water, face up, and not moving in the deep end. Your heart is in your mouth or whatever. I went down the side of the pool as fast as I could. I screeched out Judy's name, went into the pool, feet first, came up under Jonathan, pushed him, did it twice, pushed him to the side. Judy came out, pulled him out by the wrist. You know, he wasn't heavy or anything. He was less than 2 years old. And I didn't know if he was dead or alive. We were both shivering. I mean, I was shivering because it was cold. And he spit up a little bit of water, but did not even require CPR. His life was saved. He definitely would have drowned if nobody had shown up, because he wasn't moving, not even flailing, nothing. He was under. And when I saw him before I jumped into the pool, I saw that his mouth, his face was about an inch under the water. And I thought he was already deceased. So we all huddled together, hugged each other. And just for me alone, all this was worth it. Of course, because it saved our son, and we would have been members of either your organization or the Compassionate Friends, definitely, because if this hadn't happened. And what I urged all your listeners to do, whether they believe in this or not, and I'm sure most of them do, but for those few who don't, if you're ever in a car and you hear the words, slow down or stop, please do it. Chances are you're going to be hit by a tractor trailer or something like that, or something not so good is going to happen if you don't. This is someone's way of trying to protect you. It could be any other kind of situation. Just take a few seconds more. Be doubtful if you want. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe. But you'll often find out that by being cautious and heeding that feeling, that voice, that intuition, whatever it is, whatever form it comes in, will protect you and save your life. Matter of fact, you see, we have 6 chapters in Hello from Heaven, if I may show the book.
Yes, yes, please do.
Which
I've given mine to other friends over and over again, so I couldn't find it tonight.
Right.
I've been lending it out.
We have 6 chapters in the book of why are these real. It's one thing, we have 353 firsthand accounts, but you can give all these accounts, but why are they real? What evidence do you have? Well, we found, because of the content, not our judgment, but the content of the experiences, some occurred before they had the news of it occurring. In other words, they were visited by the deceased child, son or daughter, before they knew that their child had made their transition, or somebody else had made their transition, whoever it was. So you're not bereaved or upset or crying or worried or whatever until you know something has happened. In this case, they didn't know, and they're told what it is, and they're shown what it is. Other ones that occur many years later, maybe 10, 20, 30 years later. People are not mourning or in grief that many years after the passing of someone. Maybe, certainly the first 2, 3, 5 years, yes, but 10, 20, 30, no. And we have, again, about 15 experiences in each of these chapters when they, in this case, occurred many years later. Others are for when they learn something they didn't know before, or they're told where something is, where they can find something of value, not necessarily monetary value, it could be sentimental value as well. Whatever it is, it could be a birth certificate they're looking for, who knows what. And they're told where to find it. And one of my favorite little stories, since you asked me, is of a woman who was guided to go up, her husband had died. She went upstairs to their bedroom, to a particular dresser, and to the upper right-hand small little drawer there, and pulled it open. And then he had told her, look underneath the paper. Now, people don't do it now, but they used to put paper or something in drawers all the time. Look under the paper, and she did, and she pulled out a life insurance policy that she never knew existed. So things of this nature. Again, you wouldn't know that unless you'd been told that. And she was told where to go and what to do by her husband. And then we have EDCs for protection, again, like protecting my son from drowning, and from fires, from automobile accidents, plane crashes, all that are in the book. I'm not just talking, they're here. That's how I know about them. I'm speaking from what I learned, not just theoretical knowledge of mine or believing it so. And also suicide intervention. There's a whole chapter of people who were very, very despondent and wanted to end their own life for a variety of reasons. And at just the right moment, just the right time, someone who had died came and spoke to them in some way. It wasn't the words, some cases there were no words. It was just being there. And perhaps for them to know that somebody else cared enough to be with them at that moment. made all the difference in not ending their life. And I wish that I could somehow address all kinds of psychiatric and psychological associations with that one, which would help avert a certain number of suicides, I believe. But that's another situation. Then finally, we have ADCs with a witness, where two or more people are at the same place, at the same time, and have the same or a similar experience. One might see their deceased loved one, and the other might feel their presence or receive a message or something of that nature. So these are the most exciting ones for me in the book, but there are so many very touching ones. That's what you asked about, some that are especially touching. And there's one that means a lot to me, because this is something I heard many times amongst bereaved parents. And that is, where was God when my son was whatever, you know? Why did he let my son or my daughter, or they carry it one step further, why did God take my child? And in this case, this woman this is a factual thing. She went to her minister and said, God didn't take your child. God received your child. And that's such a small difference of words, but such a big difference in meaning. God doesn't take our children. And I'm a bereaved father. My daughter died in 2011, my younger daughter. She was 47. And I never even thought of having God do it. No, not at all. And please know that God doesn't take your children. Nobody's children. If he does, he's not a God I want to know or know about. Thank you. But that doesn't happen. I've never heard of it happening or anything like it.
That is beautiful. And I want to say that I was going to ask you about that, because in 2011, I was at a conference that you were supposed to be a keynote speaker at. And unfortunately, the books were there, but you weren't able to make it because of your daughter.
Right.
And I was going to ask you if you get any after-death communication from her. Have you experienced any of that?
Yes, quite a bit. Initially, I received information from some other source about her, because frankly, she had ended her own life with suicide. And I may as well say why. She had met a man who convinced her to go off all the antidepressant drugs and things like that she was on. She was on a bunch of them. She had been a patient of a lot of psychiatrists in her life, and blah, blah, blah. But she went cold turkey off all these drugs. Then something happened, and she told her older sister that she was thinking about taking them again, but she didn't get that far. She ended her own. This, by the way, gets me angry, because she lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She was able to go into a Walmart, buy a .38 handgun right then, right there, no background check, no waiting period, and walk home and use it an hour and a half later. And I'm very anti-gun because as a result of that. I was somewhat before, but this really did it. Because she had a long psychiatric history, meaning I'd seen counselors for many years, and things of that nature. And she should never have been able to buy a gun, let alone the same day. That's stupid, absolutely stupid. And so I heard about her health and that she was resting, healing. Healing's the right, resting and healing, I think, because of the suddenness of her transition. I think she was in so much pain when she did it that she just wanted to end her existence. It wasn't about going to an afterlife. It was about just no more. I've had enough. This is it. And I know what it's somewhat like to go into a black hole, down, 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 always getting darker, 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 and never ending. That's what you believe, that as badly as you feel at this moment, you will never feel better. It'll always be worse. And that's what people feel before they take their own life. And I think that's the way she felt. And I received reports on her, not a whole lot of them, but enough to know that she was healing. And then I did hear from her several times. And I saw her once. That was the most joyous part. I saw her. The song I associated with her was "Here Comes the Sun," George Harrison and the Beatles. And that was playing in the background, and all of a sudden, boom, there she was. I could see her with my eyes open or shut, but sort of right here, right in front of my so-called third eye, meditative space, whatever you want to call it. And full color, she was twirling and she was going in a circle at the same time. She was healed and whole, in radiant health, and very happy. And later on in a long writing, I learned that she was working with children with, we don't have it on Earth, three-dimensional art. It's like super box kites, but that's so limited a description. It's like 50 box kites tied together in all different patterns and shapes, and then flying, but able to do things and manipulate them and maneuver them with your mind on the other side, with your mind, there's no air. So you do it, and children love that, little children, young children. And we were all giggling and laughing and just so playful that it was so delightful. And it was.
I've heard that our kids can actually commandeer birds as well and other animals to bring them to us and get in touch with us. So you must have been seeing some box kites then that you knew were from her as well.
Well, I haven't had that kind of experience that I've recognized so much, the symbolic experiences. But with me, I've always been able to receive writings, and that's what I do with her. And then I share them with her mother and other people, her brothers. She has 3 brothers, of course, half brothers, and an 2 other sisters. And I just know she's going to be there when I make my own transition.
That's wonderful. Oh my goodness. And it's wonderful that you had already started these studies before she transitioned. So you already knew so much about it, and you knew that she was fine. I just want to read very quickly from the chat box. Lavon is saying something about that protection part that you were talking about, that we get these ADCs for protection. She said, I was told to put my seatbelt on 3 separate times in 1997. I didn't listen. A drunk driver hit us head on, and I went up and over the front seat, kissed the windshield, and 2 strong hands grabbed me and snatched me back into my seat. So she's saying that this is not really a question, but it's just confirming what you were saying about having that protection, which is amazing. But we also have some questions. Galen is asking how ADC is different from spirit communication with a medium, or is it the same thing?
Okay, the differences with a medium or a psychic medium or a psychic, or whatever you want to call them, there are other names as well, is that this is where your child, deceased child, or whoever it may be, could be any relationship or a friend, anybody, or even someone you don't know yet, believe it or not, but that's another topic, comes to you directly. There's no third party involved. They speak to you, or whatever form of communication you have, and there are 12 in our book, 12 forms of communication. You can feel their presence, hear their voice, smell a fragrance associated with them, feel a touch like a pat, a tap, a caress, a kiss, a hug, so-called dreams, out-of-body experiences, telephone calls. Yes, there are phone calls from those who've moved on, and symbolic ones, which can typically be butterflies and rainbows and almost anything these days. And then physical phenomena, where TVs go on and it's a song that you associate with your child, things of that nature, on and on and on. But there are 12 categories. So all these are very, very uplifting, whatever form you get it in. Different people get different ones.
So they're directly to the person and not through the medium.
There's no third party. See,
go ahead.
The thing I'd say, and I'm not knocking mediumship, because many of them are very ethical and moral and certainly help people a great deal who are bereaved. But this way, it's in terminology. The medium, every one of us uses words slightly differently, has a slightly different meaning to them. When they come to us directly, we recognize them so much more when it's their voice that we're hearing, or their scent that we're smelling, whatever it may be. And it's just one less filter, so to speak. They're there with you. It's I don't know how else to say that. I mean, a medium's an intermediary.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And I was going to ask you, because I know that you've developed exercises to help us increase these ADCs. And maybe you could talk about some of those, the different things that.
Well, we were working at one point on a course called the ADC course, but we never finished it. But we do have something called healingangel.org, healingangel.org, which has a whole bunch of guided imagery on it for more like solving problems, everything from headaches and migraines. And I learned a technique myself, which I've used for years. I can help anybody eliminate a headache within 5 minutes, literally. And I've done it in person. I've done it on the phone. I've done it in crowded restaurants and other places with total strangers. It doesn't matter. I don't touch them. I just speak to them. I ask them certain questions over and over. It's very, very boring for me and for them to hear the same questions. But as long as they cooperate, the headache goes away in 5 minutes or less. It's a bummer with a migraine. It takes up to 15 minutes. So but it works there too. But we have other things that for PTSD, for finding your purpose in life, for relaxation, I think we have 16 of them on there. Again, healingangel.org.
Thank you. I've typed it into the chat box. And Catherine has an interesting question, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. She says that it's a little confusing to understand. God receives our loved ones. What exactly does that mean? Who orchestrates the death, so to speak? How is it that people just die or others don't and they get warned or saved? Can you maybe elucidate a little or talk?
I will be happy to, but I'm going to take you out pretty far. And it's not from my research, but there are 2 books. If you really want to go with this and really want to go deep and profoundly, there are 2 books. One is called Journey of Souls, and the other is Destiny of Souls by Michael Newton, PhD. And to answer the questions you just asked, this is based upon his lifetime work, not just a few years, but his entire lifetime's work of using hypnotherapy with people, taking them back to a previous lifetime. And then when they die from that, they go to the afterlife, where we all go to the afterlife in between lives. So we're speaking multiple lives here, but that's not the big case. The purpose is that we then, before we are born again into this life, we make certain choices and we choose what grandparents, what parents, what culture, what religion, what place, time, socioeconomic, all these different things that define us, what race, what gender, on and on, that we show up as. And one of the criteria many people do is they choose when they will leave. Now, this may seem like the most cruel thing I could ever say, and that is they may choose to leave their parents at a young age. But it's not to hurt them. It's not to cause them just pain and punish them. Rather, it's to stretch them open, to cause them to awaken spiritually for their own growth. And even the parent knows this before they're born too, because this is all done as a group, but we just don't remember it. This is from Michael Newton's books, not my work. And so there are no accidents, no mistakes from this point of view. It's all planned out in advance for everyone's maximum spiritual growth and transformation. And it is transformation. And only by reading one or both of these books, Journey of Souls or Destiny of Souls, do you have any idea what I'm talking about. I can't.
You know, it's so interesting. The same person who asked the question, Catherine, is in the process of reading Journey of Souls right now. And a lot of other parents have already read those books. And so very good suggestions. Thanks for giving those suggestions. Linda is asking what your perspective is on exit points. Do you think that we have a number of them?
I can't really, I'm not qualified to answer that. I've heard, for me, that's a theory. I'm not saying it's not so. I just don't know. I don't know. We have a whole bunch of exit points and I don't know how to answer it. It's not
Okay.
part of
Well,
anything I've been exposed to.
that's
Other than
fine. No worries. I guess from what I understand is that we possibly do have a few exit points,
yes,
but that it's all pretty much predestined that we are going to transition at a certain time. Might be by a different way of passing, though, from what I understand. Darcy is saying Soul's Purpose book. So she's actually, she might be talking about my soul plan and my so this is all something that all of the information about our soul plans is very interesting to read. I have to go back to the headache thing, though. Sharon is saying she has headaches and she needs that. Where is that information available? On that website, healingangel.org?
The guided imagery is right there. You just have to click on it and sit back, and you don't have to relax because you're in pain. So just do your best to just close your eyes and listen. And
Okay.
all it is asking certain questions over and over and over. If nothing else, I kind of bore you to death, and that heals it. But I'll ask certain questions. They're actually in my son's voice because he has a better voice for this than I do, but we wrote the exercises together.
Wonderful. So this is just a recorded, you're saying something over and over with images that someone's watching.
It's explained in the beginning, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Babette is asking if you have gotten information about the nature of God. I think that's an interesting question. I don't know if it's way too deep, or are you...
Still working on that for myself, all right? Okay, I can use the big one. God is love. Ultimate love, and I don't mean just love of your children, love of your husband or wife, love of food, a certain food or a certain fragrance or a certain visual scene, but beyond all those, beyond anything we can conceive of, is love.
That's
and it's
beautiful.
all powerful, all encompassing, all everything. And that's what near-death experiencers try to say in their own words. But again, it's too big.
It's ineffable, impossible to explain. Yes, definitely. Laura is asking, is my son limited to how many times or how frequently he can visit me or send me signs?
I'm asked that, I've been asked that in a variety of ways many times. No, they're not limited. But why do some people have these experiences and others don't? Why do some people have one, others have 3, 4, 6, or 8 or more? We don't know. There's no way, nobody's ever said this is why. But it seems to be that some people need them more than others. And it doesn't mean that other people aren't loved equally as much by their child who died. But they have to learn how to do it. They have to want to do it. We have to know how to do it or be open and receptive. Now today, 2020, it's a very different world than 1977 when I first heard about this with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Many years later, 46, 45 years later, whatever it is. And people's minds are more open because, frankly, I'm proud to say this book has created it. And other books, I don't mean just this book, but this was the first one that did. It showed what could happen, which in a sense opened minds. Because people were afraid if they began to have an experience like this, and they would abort them themselves, or they dismiss them, they ditch them. No matter, they might have a beautiful experience in the morning, and by the afternoon, that was imagination. That wasn't real. Because the psychologists, psychiatrists have known about these for years, and they called them grief-induced hallucinations. That was their phrase, not mine. That's what we were fighting in writing this book. Like, the professionals knew about all this, and they just grief-induced hallucination. And how am I to fight it without a master's degree, a PhD, or an MD? You know, that's what they were saying out there. And nevertheless, this has taken hold, and because people trust their own experience after a while, and that makes all the difference. But these have been known for decades and decades. That's why I was so surprised that nobody had ever written about them before, had ever conducted any extensive research. But it was because that's how they were regarded, and If people said, well, I heard from my son or my daughter, there was a little pat on the head or the shoulder or something, that's nice. Now let's get down to business, would be the attitude in the office visit. You're hallucinating. It was a thought. They didn't say it, but that's what they were thinking. It can't be so, therefore it isn't. It's the old way of looking at it. This can't be true, therefore it isn't. And that's modern science. As Eben Alexander, in his book about his near-death experience, showed that science can exist, but also all the spiritual world does exist as well. It's not either or, it's both and. And once you get to that both and, that's when the world becomes brighter, more happier, more pleasant, and you can find alternatives.
Well, and that's when we understand that we're in school and all of our loved ones who have passed are home. And I think that that's the most important thing, that we know that they are happy, healthy, and whole, and that we just have a bunch to do until we get there. But I have another question here from Carol asking, you talked a little earlier about the fact that our loved ones who have passed don't talk about their now lives in spirit. Why do you suppose that is? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Again, these are very brief experiences, usually.
Yeah.
In some cases, people leave their body and go to the other side and see their loved one there. That's not very frequent, though. So, but mostly it's just a, hello, how are you? I want to let you know I still exist. I'm okay. Don't grieve for me. Don't worry about me. Because there are two parts of grief. One is our concern for our son, our daughter. The other is the pain we feel and the loss, the emptiness. And that's a word I don't hear discussed nearly enough, the emptiness we feel. And like something was ripped out of us and there's just a great big hole there, H-O-L-E. Great big space where something is missing, someone is missing. And so these are short and brief, and they don't have time to go into philosophy and you know, let me catch you up for the next 20 minutes. It's not like that, and for the most part.
Well, I wanted to say, first of all, that it's so amazing that you did write this book. I am so grateful that you did. Deb is saying, thank you for writing the book. It was the first book I received from someone who lost a child. And she feels eternally grateful to you as well. I have other people asking about recommended resource for improving communication with our kids. I know that you have been working on that. Do you have any thoughts on books or websites or groups to help improve communication besides helping parents feel? We're pretty good at helping them.
Well, again, the ones I've worked with the most are the compassionate friends and helping parents heal. But I've spoken to all kinds of other groups. You know, dealing with suicides is very, very difficult because of the social stigma, and people buy into it. And I get angry at frankly at those because they're so inflexible in most cases. And sometimes even the professionals who work in them are inflexible. Because I've been to many different support groups myself, just as a father whose daughter had died. And no, you can't say this and you can't say that, and you can't bring in this and you can't bring in that. It's like, and I was just trying to help people, and the answer is no. But there are a couple of books. I'm trying to find which ones are here. One is The Purpose of Life. The Purpose of Life by David Sunfellow. David Sunfellow. Sunfellow. What that is, it's a compilation from near-death experiences of ones he's been involved with. Now, has a website and all that for many years. He's been doing this for many, many years. It's a compilation of some of the best NDEs from the in the books and into lectures and things like that, all in one book. And you learn more about the purpose of life and why we're here and things like that. And I've recommended this book highly and given out many copies of it. And it's available, of course, at Amazon. Once again, The Purpose of Life.
I have that in the chat box if anybody needs it. Are you having any workshops anymore? Are you doing any of that right now?
Basically, to be honest with you, I'm retired because number one, right now I can't travel anyway. I don't want to. I don't want to go spend a night in some hotel and eat in some restaurant and all that stuff elsewhere. And but no, I was a presenter for 30 years, and it just wasn't fun getting on another airplane, flying to some city, and blah blah blah. I won't bore you with the details. And so 30 years, but I'm delighted to do internet radio, internet television. This is very fulfilling. So I'm doing the same thing without it's working at home. It's like the lockdown, but in this case, I was already doing it.
That's wonderful. We are so fortunate to have you here tonight too.
And I'm willing to travel anywhere within Florida. Yes.
Yeah.
Not on
okay. Suzanne is asking, and this is a really interesting question. Bill, you speak of how the nature of spirituality has changed since the 70s. What do you see for the future? I heard recently that the thinning veil will be gone by 2027. No veil. What do you suppose? Do you think that's true?
That's too big a question for me to answer.
Okay. Well, it is definitely thinning though, right? Would you not say that?
I would say it's thinning in that Raymond Moody's first book, written in 1975, the original publication was 5,000 copies. I have one of those books. Nobody thought it would go anywhere. It was just he was a medical student at that point, not a doctor yet. And look what it led to. I mean, tens of thousands of people. It's a household phrase now, near-death experience. It's used in the wrong way. In various TV shows, an automobile crash was almost a near-death experience, or a plane crash. But all it is, a plane just sort of waffled in the air for a while. It didn't crash or anything. So it's misused. And those have become accepted, I think, by the public. Maybe not by all the paranormal people and the psychiatrists, psychologists, scientists, those people. It's accepted by the people who are grieving, the people who want to know, want to read, want to understand. Again, there's religion and there's spirituality. And I'm not going to say religion is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying spirituality is something else that's bigger for most people. And new books come out, people can read them. And yes, some of them are Christian books. Heaven is for Real was a wonderful little book about Burpo. I get the names mixed up, but and they made a beautiful movie out of it, and it was very touching. I've given out copies of that. And so, whatever source, east, west, north, south, whatever, whether it's a book, or a movie, or something else.
That's wonderful. Tell me, going back to the phone calls, I have someone in the chat box asking if you could talk a little bit more about those phone calls that are the ADCs.
Phone calls from the deceased?
Yes.
It's not that. One man did write, it was his best-selling book, Phone Calls from the Dead, Scott Rogo. And what's the one book his publisher let drop? And even though it was his best-selling, was that book. So it's a crazy world out there as far as publications go. But what happened, a typical one is your phone rings, and it can be a cell phone. It can be a regular phone. And you pick it up and you hear the voice of your loved one, your child, your son, your daughter. You hear a message, and you may have two-way conversation or one-way, and then it fades away, and that's the end of it. And this is when you're wide awake in a kitchen, maybe making food or cleaning up or whatever. So it's not while you're dreaming or anything. Those can occur while you're asleep, but they can occur when you're wide awake and everything's very, very real all around you, three-dimensionally real.
Wow. So I have someone asking about what you think about EVP. Are you, do you have any thoughts on that?
Electronic voice phenomena. That's a thing that I don't even know if that's much in existence anymore. It used to be you'd use a cassette recorder and put it in an empty room and hopefully have nobody interfere with it, and you might hear something on it the next day. I read a lot of material about that years ago, and I'm not qualified. I never did it. I never had any success. I never tried it. I never had it work. It's not. It wasn't reported as part of our work at all. There's another one called transcommunication where they did it with a television, and I forget the name of the man who did it, but it was in Colorado, I think. But they required a medium to be present, and then it would see the image of the deceased loved one on the TV screen. But what is being worked on, this is going to sound very far out, it's called the soul phone. Mm-hmm. And it's right in your state. It's in Tucson.
Yes.
And you know Mark. You know
Yes.
Mark, your stick. Yes. And he's involved with that. And as are a number of PhD people, Gary Schwartz. And they're working on a two-way telephone from here to heaven. And if that ever takes off, that will change life on Earth. If it works, and I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it won't. I don't know. But I hope it does, because it will change everything except for those who will try to block it, because it will threaten them in some way.
Well, yes, I certainly know about the soul phone, and that's something that, Gary Schwartz actually was a keynote speaker at our last conference, but he didn't speak a lot about the soul phone. And Mark was a board member of Helping Parents Heal. So people do know about it, and it is pretty amazing. And if it works, it's going to be life-changing.
The big word is if in that case, because it's a new technology, and it's like the cell phone at one time was a big if, but now it's real.
Yeah.
Maybe one day this will be just as real.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, I was wondering, let's see, Valentina's asking about something that I'm not familiar with, and I'm not sure if you will be either. She's asking about TikTok ripple effect videos. She recorded several videos with her son's apparition in 3 areas of the house. Have you heard of that, Bill?
I'm not familiar, no.
Okay, I didn't know.
TikTok?
I think it's something.
Is that the website?
TikTok. I think it must be an app, and it's something that's newer. I'm not really familiar with it myself. Nancy is asking about a researcher doing ongoing work on EVP. I think that's Sonia Rinaldi. She's in Brazil, and she is doing, Valentina is saying that it's an app with a ripple effect filter. So, so it's a video app. So I guess some of the moms on here know about this, but
okay. I'm not the expert on all forms of this. I can't be. No one person can be.
Yes, yes. Well, you know a lot about this, and again, you're one of the people who made all of this happen, and I feel so grateful for that. Can you tell us again exactly the year that Hello from Heaven was published then? Because you waited for 10 years, you were hoping that Dr. Moody would join you, and when did it actually
We began our research in 1988, and we self-published 5,000 copies in 1995. And it was the fall of 95, and we sold 2,000 copies, and I think it came out in October, and by December we had a contract with Bantam Books. 2 months later. And even that was magical, because our literary agent said, sell 10,000 copies of your book and then I'll listen to you. She thought it was too far out. And the way it happened with there is she'd have a copy in her backpack, and somebody say, oh, what's that? Well, I want to see it. These were editors at major publishers. Or they'd say, what are you working on now? What have you got? And there were going to be 4 major publishing houses that were going to bid on this book the same day. But it's on the other side, it snowed in New York City, so only 2 did. But Bantam Books was one of them, and that's the one that won the raffle, so to speak, and published it. And that was in 96 in hardcover, in 97, this one in paperback. And this is available for less than $10, less than $8 on Amazon. It's 7 something on Amazon.
It's an amazing book. As I say, I don't have mine right now because I lend it out all the time. And I was wondering, I would assume that it's available in other languages as well.
Well, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, we are a very big country. And we read lots of books. We have lots of disposable income. Other countries aren't as fortunate. They have much smaller populations. They don't, I'm not going to say they don't read. Of course, many people read, but and some of the poorer ones, obviously not that many compared to the United States. And so you can get a book published, say, in Brazil, in Portuguese, or in Dutch, or in Romanian, or whatever. But they do 1,000 copies, 2,000 copies. They sell out and they go to the next book. They don't have the readership and the bookstores and all that to keep them in stock and keep reordering them.
That's
See,
very
book,
interesting.
the other side, that's true of many books on near-death experiences. I've gone out of print. You can buy older copies on eBay. But you see, ours has been out since 96, and by Bantam, and it's called a classic.
A classic. It's a classic.
It's a classic, yes.
That's a great designation. So the reason that I was asking is that Life After Life was translated into French, and it saved my mother-in-law's life. She had a terrible accident in the Belgian Congo, coming home from a dinner party, went through the windshield, went through the tunnel, saw, her loved ones, told people when she got back. She had 75 stitches in her face, and everybody told her she was crazy. This accident happened in 1975, exactly the same year that the translation into French of Life After Life was published. And so I was just wondering, we do have groups in other areas of the world too. It's always nice to know if any of these books are available in
Sometimes they're available on eBay or the equivalent or a used bookstore. Italy, it did very well in Italy. The country it's sold best in is Germany, and they keep sending us more royalties, so they must be publishing it every year in Germany, because a check comes in around November or December for that, a small check, but it's but in many other countries it was in 15 to 18 foreign languages at one point, but again, they don't do 20,000 copies at a time initially or anything like that. It was in Polish, but it was 1,000 copies in Poland.
Oh yeah,
that kind of thing.
Well, so, I'm so grateful to you for starting the discussion about this. Let's see. Okay, I have one other question here from Jody, asking if souls reincarnate, can they still communicate with you? Is that?
According to the Michael Newton books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, they don't even do it for about 100 years usually. So there's plenty of time for you to catch up with them. And with his writings, we all belong to soul families, soul groups. So we work together. And it's not like they're going to leave you, for another family or something, reincarnate with them and dismiss you. It doesn't work quite that way. Those two books can explain it far better than I can, because it's such a big topic. And there are many pages devoted to each of these types of questions.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that, because I agree with you. And I also think that souls can exist in many places at the same time. So they don't necessarily have to be here. They can be there and we can still communicate. Let's see. So
there's even a thing which I don't understand at all, any more than most people will, but that a soul can incarnate as two different people at one time.
Oh.
Things like that. And I don't understand the wording.
That's pretty special, I guess.
I come across it. So it's not just everything's one-to-one the way we think it is on Earth.
Yeah.
The spiritual world has different laws, rules, fundamentals than Earth does.
And Lavon is agreeing. She's saying we are multidimensional. That's pretty sweet. And I agree with her. But I just want to take the time right now to say that I sprung a question on Bill Guggenheim at the beginning of this when we were still in the waiting room, asking if he would be willing to be on a panel for a International Day of Healing after loss. with Open to Hope and with a lot of other different organizations. But we're hoping that that he will be on it, as well as Eben Alexander and Dr. Raymond Moody, as well as Suzanne Giesman, who's already said yes. She said yes right before this. Bill said yes. This is on the 22nd of June, and it's going to be completely free. So I'm going to get information to everyone. It's going to start at 8:30 on the East Coast, or on, no, sorry. It's going to start at 8:30 on the West Coast and 11:30 on the East Coast, and go to 3:30 on the West Coast, and I think 6:30 on the East Coast. Anyway, so please look for information about that on Helping Parents Heal. I feel very, very grateful to Bill for being a part of this panel, and they're going to be speaking about coronavirus, about COVID-19, and healing after after loss, which is going to be something that I think everybody will be very, very interested in. And then let's see, I just want to make sure. Darcy's asking another question here, but I don't know exactly enough about it to be sure. She's asking if you believe in walk-ins. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I'm familiar with walk-ins. That was Ruth Montgomery, who wrote a book about them. The phrase walk-ins means that, well, that one person who's alive physically wishes to leave this planet, not by suicide, but wishes to leave, and that another being who's in spirit will come in, and the first one will leave, and the second one will come in into that physical body, and then we'll finish up any unfinished business with that person's relatives, friends, business associates, and whatnot. And then they came back as an adult, usually, to accomplish some purpose. And there's a very cute little cartoon, because this is something women relate to, beauty salons, where they have a sign out, walk-ins welcome. Now, they don't mean what I'm talking about now, where people left their body. No, they just mean you don't have to have an appointment. But you get the parallel, the playfulness here. And so it's a very controversial point of view. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying anybody's wrong. I don't know. I don't know how you prove it one way or the other. There was a Tibetan monk, Tuesday Lobsang Rampa, and his body became so used and beaten up. He claimed that he left his body so another being could come in and continue to use it. He could take over another body someplace and continue his work. So that's a very far out Tuesday Lobsang Rampa. He used to have a pile of books, like 15 books that he had written, and they were fascinating. I read them back in the 70s, and but utterly different than anything we know about here in the West.
Well, everyone is thanking you in the chat box, and I am just so grateful myself. And people are saying that they're going to be a part of the event on June 22nd, which will be wonderful. Of course, it'll happen by Zoom, so everybody's invited. And again, it's completely free of charge. And do you have any closing words? I don't want to take too much of your time, and I know it's late on the East Coast, but anything more that you'd like to say? Yeah.
I want to say thank you. For me, I come up the most alive when I have an audience or even one person to share this with, because this makes me feel good. This makes me come alive. I feel caring and loving, protective. I am 81. I have 5 children, 6 granddaughters, and you are my family in a way. And I've met many of the people, like the Gloria and Heidi Horsley, and I did 15 national conferences for the Compassionate Friends. This is our second. And yes, I was supposed to be in Charleston, but there's no Charleston for you, but there will be someday, and on and on. And I just love doing it. If I can help one person, 2 or 3 people, make them feel a little bit better, because I know what it's like to have that pain. My daughter died. That pain is there, and it doesn't go away. It feels better, but sometimes it pops up again. It's like a jack in the box. You don't know when it's going to pop up. What day? You can say having a great day, and boom, some thought, some emotion, some smell, some sound, some song can trigger feelings like all over again. Recently, my little black dog, Charlie, died on April 15th. He had been with me for 15 years. I live alone, and he was my constant companion. And 7 o'clock, I'd wake up to walk him, and we'd walk half an hour and come back and feed him. And as he got older, give him his medications. And my house feels very empty without him, because I keep looking up expecting to see him. Now, I know I'm talking about a dog, not my daughter or son, but it could be a grandparent, it could be a friend, it could be a wife or a husband. Grief is grief. Sadness is sadness, emptiness, and the worst thing of all, that emptiness.
Everyone is agreeing with you. Our dogs are family, and they're also, I just have to tell you, you have so many wonderful things that are being said. Nancy is saying, thank you, I savored hello from heaven, taking a very long time to absorb it because of the depth of the writing and experiences, which I think is beautiful. Wishing you many satisfying years ahead. Thank you, Bill, for so interesting and very comforting. This is from Sandra. Jennifer saying, thank you so much, Bill. Looking forward to reading your book. So I'm excited if some people haven't read your book yet that they're going to, and on and on. There's so many people thanking you. One person is saying, emptiness is such a great description. Enjoying this so much. My book is on the way. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that as well.
I saw that somebody said, am I getting another dog? First of all, it's too soon. I mean, your son dies, you just don't grow a new son. It wouldn't be right to just have another dog a month or two later for me. And I'm not saying what somebody else should or should not do. And I don't think I have the energy or the lifetime left to take care of a dog the way Charlie was a rescue dog, and I wouldn't want him to have to be rescued a second time, a new dog. And maybe I'll get one if it comes to me, it'll come. I believe that. If the opportunity and it's right there, and somebody says I have to find a home, would you know one? And yeah. But to just run out to the nearest pet store or the nearest animal rescue place, no, I don't think that's the way to do this. My little Charlie was so special. Nobody can replace him.
He's adorable too, that's for sure. But we have a lot of suggestions. So maybe a cat or maybe a senior rescue dog. So
I'd like a woman. I'd rather have a girlfriend.
Okay, well,
totally
that's
honest.
Good to know. So your heart speaks volumes. Thank you for your gentle soul. And then Mary's saying, I really enjoyed your book. It was a great read and I highly recommend it. Thank you. Let's see. One of the moms is saying, Suzanne is saying that her son left a dog and a cat behind, and we have them now. They were his kids, which is true. A lot of us have our kids' pets, which are very, very important to us. Jody's saying you're looking good for 81, which is true.
Thank you.
Anyway, just so many people are thanking you. I truly am honored that you agreed to speak tonight. Thank you very, very much. And what we always do at the end of this is that everybody unmutes their microphone and says goodbye and thank you, if that's okay with you, Bill.
Yes.
And
by the way, I'd like to say something.
Yes, then say something first.
I don't know what the right word is. Moderator? Is that hosting?
I guess, I'm not sure.
Whatever it is you do it wonderfully because you yourself are so warm and loving.
Well, thank you. I think it's.
I knew that when I met you. I mean, boom, there we were in Scottsdale.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, thank you from all of us. So everybody go ahead and unmute your microphones. say goodbye to
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Say
Thank you.
aloha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
Bill.
thank you.
So helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much.
A bientôt.
Thank you.
Bientôt.
Thank you.
I like what they say in Hawaii. Aloha.
Aloha, yes.
Aloha.
Or ciao.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's wonderful to see everybody tonight. See you tomorrow, hopefully, for Tom Zula. And Friday night for John Holland. And thank you, everyone.
Love you, Elizabeth.
Love you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.